Ever feel like the wisest advice is often the simplest, but somehow the trickiest to actually put into practice?
Hmm. I know what you mean.
Well, that's exactly what we're diving into today
Yeah.
with Lao Tzu's Tao Te Ching. Think of it as a deep dive into ancient wisdom that's still surprisingly relevant today.
You hit the nail on the head with the word dive.
Oh,
The Tao Te Ching isn't about just like spoon-feeding you answers.
right.
It's more like giving you a treasure map,
Yeah.
guiding you to see the world in a completely new way.
And maybe even a new way of, like, actually being in the world,
Yeah,
right?
totally.
But even before we even get to open this treasure map, we
Wow.
already run into, like, our first intriguing paradox.
Oh, yeah.
The book itself tells us straight up, the Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. It's kind of like trying to explain, like, color to
Right.
someone who's been blind from birth.
Absolutely.
Words just aren't enough, are they?
They fall short. Yeah. Trying to grasp the Tao
Yeah.
just through explanation is like, I don't know, trying to catch a river in a bucket.
Okay.
You might get a little bit of the water,
Yeah.
but you miss the essence of, like, the flow, the current. The true understanding of it
Right.
is in the experiencing.
Which I'm guessing is why this deep dive format is so perfect.
There you go.
It's not just about the words on the page,
Yeah.
but how this wisdom actually plays out in our everyday lives.
Precisely.
And speaking of playing out, I mean, we definitely can't ignore this theme of paradox
I
that
like
we
that.
see throughout the entire text.
Everywhere you look, yeah.
For example, Lao Tzu tells us in Chapter 2, the master acts without doing anything and teaches without saying anything.
Right.
Now, how does that even work?
Okay. So it's like, it's meant to challenge, those go-getters, gotta hustle harder instincts
Yeah,
that we're so used to in our modern lives.
for sure.
The Tao's encouraging us to think about a different approach.
Okay.
Like, imagine a surgeon who's so incredibly skilled, so in tune with what they're doing,
Mm-hmm.
that their movements almost seem effortless, right?
Wow,
They
yeah.
get these incredible results because they're so aligned with, like, the natural flow of their expertise.
Yeah.
It's kind of like acting without doing.
So it's less about, like, being passive
Exactly.
and more about being so in sync with your actions
Right.
that it takes less effort to have a bigger impact.
There you go.
Which, now that I think about it, sounds incredibly freeing once
Yeah.
you kind of wrap your head around it.
That's the beauty of the Tao Te Ching.
Yeah?
It's always prompting us to question our assumptions.
Yeah.
Look beyond those surface level interpretations. Like, take, for example, another one of those paradoxes,
Yeah.
Chapter 13. Success is as dangerous as failure. Hope is as hollow as fear.
Yeah, that's a tough pill to swallow,
It is.
especially in a world that's so obsessed with, like, achievement and always thinking positive.
Right.
So what's so dangerous about striving for success and clinging to hope,
Okay.
according to the Tao Te Ching?
It's about realizing that becoming too attached to any outcome, good or bad, success or failure,
Okay.
hope or fear,
Right.
that can actually be what causes suffering. Imagine you build your entire life, everything, around reaching one specific goal,
Mhm.
and then you get there, and it doesn't actually bring you that lasting happiness
Oh, wow.
you thought it would.
Yeah.
So it's more about finding a balance and a contentment
Mhm.
within the journey itself,
I
not being fixated on just the destination.
So less about ignoring our goals
Ah.
and more about approaching them with a sense of detachment,
I think so.
not
Yeah.
being so caught up in the end result, but
Yeah.
really being present in the process.
You got it. And with that in mind,
Yeah.
the Tao Te Ching actually gives us a model for how to live out these principles.
Okay.
It introduces us to this figure of the master.
Oh, the mass.
Remember, this isn't like some mythical level of like perfection that's
Yeah.
impossible to reach. It's a way of being. It's a journey of
Really?
continually trying to better align ourselves with the Tao.
So how about we meet this master in our next segment?
Sounds good.
What actually defines this master? What are their qualities, and how can we cultivate something similar in
Yeah.
our own lives?
Let's do it.
So we're back, and I gotta say, I am really curious to meet this so-called master from the Tao Te Ching.
Yeah.
What is it that makes them so masterful?
Well, in Chapter 15, the Tao Te Ching describes the master as like careful as someone crossing an iced over stream,
Okay.
but then also clears a glass of water.
Interesting.
So you have this kind of fascinating juxtaposition,
Yeah.
being cautious, but also transparent,
Yeah.
deliberate, but also adaptable.
So it sounds like it's all about balance.
Yeah.
Navigating all of life's challenges with this mix of carefulness and clarity.
Exactly.
But what can we actually learn from this master figure?
Yeah.
Right? It's easy to imagine some lone person meditating on a mountaintop,
Right.
but how do those qualities translate to, like, say, navigating a Monday morning meeting at work?
Well, and that's the beauty of it, right? It's not just for, like,
Yeah.
some mystical being.
Right.
These are qualities that anyone can work towards, anyone can embody,
Yeah.
even in the middle of a chaotic week.
Right.
Like, think about those careful steps the master takes on ice.
Okay.
It's about moving forward with this real awareness,
Yeah.
considering each step you take,
Right.
rather than just, like, barreling ahead on autopilot.
So being present, being mindful,
Exactly.
instead of just rushing through emails, we can approach everything we do with that same intentionality,
I love that.
making conscious choices about, like, where we focus our energy.
And that actually connects to another really important idea that the Tao Te Ching keeps coming back to, Wu Wei.
Right, wu wei, often translated as effortless action.
Yes, or non-doing.
Right, non-doing,
Yeah.
which honestly always sounded a little cryptic to me.
I know, it's a bit of a head-scratcher.
It is. But I think I'm starting to understand how it's not about, not taking action, but
Right.
more about aligning ourselves with that, like, natural flow of things.
Exactly. Finding that sweet spot where your actions almost, like, become effortless,
Yeah.
almost instinctual even,
Oh, yeah.
because you're just so in tune with what you're doing
Right. You're so aligned.
or the situation around you.
It's giving, like, in the zone.
Yeah.
When I'm really clicking on a project and hours will just fly by and I don't even realize it.
Exactly.
Like, things just fall into place, effortlessly.
Yes, and that feeling of flow you're describing,
Yeah.
that's a perfect example of Wu Wei in action.
Yeah.
You're not forcing it, you're letting it happen.
That's a good way to put it, not forcing it.
And the Tao Te Ching uses these really powerful metaphors from nature to illustrate this principle.
Okay. Like what?
One of the most famous ones is, water. In chapter 78, it says, "Nothing in the world is as soft and yielding as water, yet for dissolving the hard and inflexible, nothing can surpass it."
It is funny how we kind of like overlook the simple things sometimes because
Yeah.
we see water and it just seems so passive, so yielding.
Right.
Yet it has this incredible power to carve through rock over time, to shape entire landscapes. It's a gentle but persistent force.
And that's the essence of Wu Wei, right? True strength isn't about brute force. It's about
Yeah.
being adaptable, being resilient, being able to navigate around obstacles rather than confronting them head on.
Okay, so speaking of navigating, the Tao Te Ching doesn't just leave us with these big abstract ideas, right?
Thankfully, no.
It gives us some concrete advice on how to actually live the Tao in our modern lives.
Right.
Which, let's be honest, can feel about as far from a peaceful mountaintop as you can get.
A million miles away sometimes.
Right. So are we ready to, like, explore how these ancient ideas can help us navigate our busy 21st century lives?
Let's do it.
How do we bridge that gap
Yeah.
between contemplating the Tao and actually, like, living it? Okay, so we've gone through all these paradoxes in the Tao Te Ching.
Wait.
We've met this, like, mysterious master figure. We've even gotten our feet wet with this idea of Wu Wei.
Yeah, Wu Wei.
But let's be real, with our phones always blowing up
Always.
and our to-do list, like, a mile long,
Right.
how do we actually take these ideas and make them real in our lives?
Yeah, it's a question for the ages, right?
Yeah.
How do we bridge that gap
Right.
between contemplating and living it?
Yes.
And the Tao Te Ching actually offers us some guidance on this.
Okay.
Back in chapter 9, it says, "Do your work, then step back. The only path to serenity."
I love that. It's so simple, but so hard sometimes.
It is, isn't it?
It is, because we get so caught up in the doing,
Yeah.
in the achieving. We
Yeah.
forget to just be, to find those moments of peace in all the chaos.
It's like we're always chasing after something
Yeah.
instead of appreciating where we already are.
It's so true. And it's so easy to fall into that trap,
It is.
especially these days.
Especially these days when everything's so fast-paced.
Exactly. But like you were saying, real serenity, it doesn't come from checking off every last thing.
No.
It's about that balance between doing and being,
Absolutely.
recognizing that our worth isn't tied to how productive we are.
There you go.
It's giving ourselves permission to step back, to breathe,
Yes.
to be present in the moment.
It's a radical idea, isn't it?
It is, especially now when it feels like busyness is like a badge of honor.
I know, but it's so important.
It is.
And the Tao Te Ching has more to say about this.
What else?
Chapter 75 says, "Act for the people's benefit. Trust them. Leave them alone."
Okay, now that feels really relevant to relationships.
Totally. Because how often are we trying to, like, control things, control situations,
Overtime.
control people even?
Oh, yeah. thinking we know what's best for everyone else.
Exactly. But what if true leadership isn't about control at all?
What is it about then?
What if it's about empowerment?
Okay.
Giving other people the space to make their own choices, to learn from their own mistakes.
So trusting them.
Yeah, trust them. Trust in the natural order of things.
Yeah.
And that takes a lot of letting go, doesn't it?
It does. Letting go of that need to micromanage every little thing.
Right.
Trusting that sometimes the best thing we can do is actually nothing at all.
And that, I think, is a perfect place to end our deep dive on the Tao Te Ching.
It does feel like we've come full circle.
Because ultimately, it's not about following a set of rules.
Right.
It's about seeing things in a new way.
A new perspective.
Yeah. Being open to those paradoxes, to the mysteries.
Right. And it's about finding that balance between effort and ease, action and non-action, control and surrender.
You got it.
Embracing this whole journey with all its ups and downs, trusting that even when things feel uncertain, we're always being guided by something bigger than ourselves.
So well said. And if there's one thing I want our listeners to take away from this deep dive,
What's that?
it's don't be afraid to ask questions, to explore.
Yeah.
Find your own path to living in harmony with the Tao.
Because in the end, isn't that what it's all about?